Hello. So I want to start off by saying that I think your group did a great job. I really liked the Jeopardy version of doing the presentation. I think it kind of like changed things up, and the videos and the websites that you chose were really well correlated to the questions, and it was just a good way to keep people intrigued. So, pertaining to the first question, what is something that you learned from today's presentation? Something that I learned is a better way to like display what I am feeling. So we kind of talked about in class how, the term today is for people to just go, I'm depressed. I'm depressed. It's kind of like a comfort word. It's a blanket term to say any way you're feeling, even if it's not actually depression. And so Chris talked about how, you really want to classify depression as feelings of helplessness and hopelessness. And that's something that I'm going to take into my everyday life a little bit more now because I know I'm a victim of it and everyone's a victim, guilty of going, I'm depressed, but you're not actually depressed. You're just having a bad day. You're experiencing some anxiety. You're sad, but you're not actually like feeling helpless and hopeless, like those despairing feelings. And so I'm going to try to take away from this a little bit more like, don't use those terms like when to say how you're feeling, more try to actually think of how you're feeling, not just a blanket term of depression. So for the second question, do you relate to anything that was spoken about today being a college student during a pandemic? I think that this can really be related to all of the videos we watched. A specific reference was the girl, the 19-year-old. We watched a video on her and how she almost committed suicide because, she was living alone in a 3-bedroom apartment. Her roommates didn't come back. Her parents lived far away because, she was away for school. And that's something that it wasn't as serious as that. And I'm glad she got the help she needed. But when we first shut down, I stayed on campus because it was safer for me to stay on campus than to go home, because I'd been in contact with more people. My parents are a little older. And so, just those overwhelming feelings of just kind of uncertainty, I think that played a lot into like my mental health and everyone else's. And just the general overall fear. You don't really know what's going on. You don't know when it's going to end. And I know people keep saying it's a common theme, like, just take it one day at a time. One day at a time. I can't count how many times that I have heard people say that. And I think that, yeah, it's a good thing to tell people, take it one day at a time. But for a lot of people, and for myself included, it's hard to take things one day at a time when you don't have an end date. So yeah, you can take it one day at a time, but when you have no idea when that day is going to come where you don't have to take it one day at a time, it's hard for people to sign up to that without knowing that there's a date in sight that this is all going to be over. And I think that also leads to people's mental health issues and anxiety and depression because, no one signed up for this. No one was prepared for this. And saying, just, create a new routine, create a new normal. I think that a lot of people are having issues with that because yeah, I can do that temporarily. Sure, I can do that for a few months. But if we're talking years, stuff like that, that's something that kind of keeps me up at night. Is like, okay, I'm good right now, but like, what about in a month? Can I handle another few months of this? That kind of stuff. And so we watched a lot of videos on like college and like what teachers can do and stuff like that. And I think it's just giving breaks where breaks are needed. Not even like school breaks, just mental health breaks. We're like, hey, like you guys don't have assignments this week. It's the week before finals. It's just review. You don't have assignments this week. Stuff like that like teachers could be helping with a little bit more and like easing up on some lecture materials. Because I have one teacher right now. We watched a TED Talk on this. The girl was talking about like university pressures and stuff like that. And I have a professor right now. And it seems like that professor thinks that their class is the only class in the world that is important. The only class that I have on my schedule, when I have 6 classes in total, it's 1 out of 6. So like your class is important to me, but it's not my circle of life. I don't revolve around that class. So like teachers just taking it into perspective a little bit on how much students actually have on their plate. That's also something I related to. I went off on a lot of tangents there. And then the third question, as a public health professional, what do you think can be done to help those who struggle with mental illness or are afraid to speak up about their struggles? I think the most important thing we can try to do is to just have open communication about it, to just try to educate people we watched a video on youth like K through 9 and COVID-19, and the video talked about how you need to educate, people need to be educated on mental health, stigma, and build relationships, because bullying and like all that stuff can lead to an increase in suicide, and so can isolation and stuff like that. So I think that the most important thing we can do is start teaching people young that it's okay to have mental health issues. Everyone has them. You're not alone. And it's okay to talk about it. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you lesser of a human. It makes you more human. And I think that as, health educators, if we look at it like that, where you just try to be open about it. It's not embarrassing. You try to, just help people in any way you can, and just open dialogue, stuff like that. I think that is going to be huge for mental health and public health education.